Hello everyone, apologies we're starting late and we had technical difficulties with the GoToWebinar. So I appreciate all of you who have stayed as we have a late start. I have with me from the Pro Bono Net team, I have Sana Malik and I also have Van Emerald. And then I also have from Capstone Practice, Mark Lauritsen and Bart Errol. And we are planning to share with you some of the highlights from, it's a small, it's kind of like the tip of the iceberg of the LHI surveys that we did for the 2022 work on LHI. So because of technical difficulties, I don't have access to the slides, but Sanam is gonna be sharing them and I'll be talking through them. Mark and Bart, do you think we should do the technical piece first? Or should we go as we had planned, considering that we're starting late? Okay, I'm not hearing anything. So Sanam, can you share the slides?
Sure.
Okay, we see
Are you
them.
able to?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay, so let's slide down and look at the quick agenda. Hold on, we went back to your screen.
Sorry about that. 1 second. I accidentally shut it off. Give me 1 second. I'm sorry about that.
It's okay. Yeah, it's like Murphy's Law. Apologies. When everything is supposed to be working, it goes south. Okay.
One second. Okay.
Okay. So let's look at the quick agenda and then we'll go to the updates just so that the community knows what's. So this is what we were planning to do. I'm probably going to shorten the evaluation part given that we are so behind. But I did want to share quickly some of the updates. So go to slide 5. We are pushing code tonight. It's a short code push, and we're gonna take the system down and then do some major changes on the LHI page. Some of them are related to find forms. We are going to be updating links on the find forms page for LHI. We worked on this with Sanam early in the year, and so end users will find the best pages for those of you who have self-help pages, etc., where you have your LHI Power forms. So that's pushing out today. And if anybody notices anything that should not be linked to, etc., let us know. And we can make a note of that for the next code push. The other things are more related to our sustainability, and they include adding PayPal as a payment option out of consumer requests and feedback we've gotten in the past 2 years. And we're going to be increasing the suggested amount for the voluntary donation for people who choose to donate by $5. So those are some of the main changes. We're also going to put a small like 3 sentences for people who want to learn how to create forms and become part of our kind of coalition of free online form providers in the United States. We're going to put some language about how best to contact me because that's not something we had before in the main page of LHI. So we will be confirming these changes tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, but it's not any major coding or major functionality. So very excited that we get to do this. So then let's go on to the other upcoming changes. We will share more about this. We're gonna have an LHI marketing page. We are improving the way we collect data on the organizations that use LHI. which are, we have thousands of organizations using your forms every day. So we're just trying to get better contact info and a sense of what forms they're using, and some other major technical projects that we will be probably sharing later on in the fall when these things kick off. We're going to also change the way we collect end user support and allow for more emotive reactions like thumbs up and thumbs down on the form feedback place of the system. So these things are coming up. Let's scroll down and move to the evaluation. And I'm gonna go through this really fast. I think for the folks that are with us, we could unmute you if you want, and you can put questions on the chat. If you want us to like dig into some of this a little more. Like I said, I'm only sharing like the ice step of the evaluation. We collected a lot of other data, and if anybody wants to connect on that or is more interested or has questions about, did we get data on this or that, feel free to chat. So we had the end user survey on the main LHI page from February to April, and we collected 364 responses. This was meant for the real end users, not like frequent users at self-help centers and stuff like that. That's what we call the partner survey. The partner survey is for developers, those that are using the forums daily, like staff, pro bono, librarians that may be pointing the resources out in their libraries, the partners, and nonprofit staff particularly, not necessarily legal nonprofit, just any nonprofit. And then the end users is, the regular folks that come in and out every day to create their individual pleading packages. So of those folks, about 83% were the person that needed the form, and about 9% were friends or family. On the partner survey, we had 43 responses, which was pretty much slightly down from last year. But this year it was really interesting because we had more respondents that are staff that are not involved in the development of the form, that are using the forms daily or weekly. So we'll get into that. So let's scroll down. So on slide 9 on the partner survey, we had, mostly advocate and attorneys, staff of court self-help centers who could be attorneys or not, and could be law students, AmeriCorps volunteers, etc. We had 20% of them said they were specifically from a legal aid organization, and 3% from pro bono type staff projects. In the next slide, the percentage of people that responded to the survey that used the forms every day, weekly or monthly, went up this year compared to 2021. The corollary of that is that then occasional use went down. So we were hearing from people that are in LHI, if not daily, weekly, or monthly, which I think it's really good because that's the base of people that are helping the public at large. So to us, this makes this information and the feedback, it gives it some additional weight. In terms, if we go down to the next slide, in terms of our developers and the folks that are creating interviews, either on behalf of your organizations or courts, that was not as that was not a significant percentage of the participants, and 61% of the people that responded said that they're not using the uploads features of LHI because they're employed at organizations that use somebody else's forms. Now, the ones that were uploading to LHI and are doing technical form development, 16% said that they do it very often, 18% said that they do it somewhat often, and 5% said that they do it rarely. So, this just confirms that this was not a developer type community that responded, but more the nonprofit world. In terms of the next slide, it was good and reassuring to hear that 95% of them found LHI to be easy or very easy to use. 5% did not find it easy to use. So that's something that we have to dig into more into the individual questions. And then 92% of the people that responded said that they found it easy to engage with us to start an online forms project, which is great. The majority were satisfied or very satisfied with LHI. So 95%, but that 5%, had really interesting comments, and a lot of that, from reading the comments, we know comes from the cyber event we had in February 22 that did impact, some of these outcomes. And it was very clear that that was a very big disruption, particularly for this community, which is the daily use, the self-help centers and stuff. So that 5%, a significant part, seemed to be related to that. But others, like asking, like, can we have more information for new users? Can we provide more guidance on like how to save and real specific requests, which we have to read through and think through about how we address those to increase satisfaction. 66% of those that participate in the partnered user haven't used the desktop support at all. Um, I don't know what to make of that number, because it could be that they don't need it, or it could be that they don't know that we offer it, or they don't know how to find it. So, um, but that's kind of what we operate on when we read an email. We know that it only represents a small percentage of all users, and 28% of those that use desktop were satisfied. Um, Yet 6% of them were dissatisfied. So those are things we have to look at. And one of the things that we're gonna do is streamline the way that we collect support information in the form so that we make it easier and faster. So we're gonna try to collect more information, like for example, what interview were they using, so that we don't have to go back and forth asking an end user what interview they're using. Because sometimes people are very stressed out and they don't know, they think that we know everything that they're doing in the system, when in fact we don't, and so we end up having a lot of touches. In terms of the go to market implementation questions, if we go to the next slide, we asked about that in the survey to get a sense of how people felt that had impacted them, or if they had any feedback on that we can do better. 63% of them said that it wasn't applicable to them. That's congruent with who the responders were, because they're not creating LHI interviews and they're not subscribing to the platform per se. And 70%, but however, those that did create interviews, 70% said that they found the subscriptions and the offerings in what we call the creator package to be very well thought out and to meet their needs. People found that, okay, let me see. We got, some feedback that we have to dig into. For example, people were not happy with the speed at which by which we responded to technical issues. A lot of this seems to be correlated again to the outage of 2022. So people made, ranked us accordingly on website stability, etc. The good news is that LHI has, when we brought it back, it was completely redone, and it was completely redone not just in terms of capacity, but also security. So it's much more stable and much more robust, and actually a lot faster than it was before February of 2022. So hopefully next year when we do this again, we'll see that reflected in some of these answers. In terms of slide 14, these were some of the topics that people suggested we do to train the community. A lot of questions on reports. What do they mean? How do I pull them? When can I pull them? So we probably will cover some of this in the December call, and maybe even create a little guide to LHI reports. And then also people said that we need to do more training on navigating the system for new users. So I think that's a great suggestion, because we have the video, but it's, we don't have a workflow on, a generic LHI form, how to get through, save, come back and edit, that kind of thing. And we can skip 15 in the interest of time. Now, 16 is really interesting because this was the first question that we ever did in 2009 when I joined in '08. Back then, nobody believed that online forums, like there was only like 58% of people said that on, forms for Proce online were at all helpful and that they found it to be a valuable investment of time and resources. It is really rewarding and gratifying, actually, for me personally, but on behalf of all of you who have worked so hard to create great forms that create complete packages that have plain language and have really great instructions. This time, the people in the field that answered the survey, 100% of them said that they thought that for legal aid groups like yourselves and for courts and the people that are creating these forms, that investment of time and resources is valuable in the context of Proce. So this is, I think, the to me the goal mark of a lot of what we do. Some people benefits of using LHI forms, what their facilities get. 17. I think all of you have experienced this in your centers and in your remote um, s- uh, hybrid type DIY or self-help center library type situations. This was a summary of what people repeated over and over about what they got out of having access to the forms that legal nonprofits are creating. And there was a lot of really good feedback and examples of how the forms that legal aid and courts create benefit these nonprofits and the communities that they serve. Like somebody said, fast way to complete what would be a 60 or 70 page or more pleading, because some of you are creating packages that can be quite robust because it's not just one form. Wanted to show some of the Zendesk metrics. um, we do all of the tickets. 76% of our tickets are one touch tickets. Generally we resolve it with one quick keynote to the end user, but that's not the majority of the time. The majority of the time goes into what we call more than one touch tickets, and it's the tickets where there's something with a form or a behavior where we have to do research and look at the back end, look at elmah logs, test ourselves, go back and communicate with the form creator, provide suggestions on how to improve the form. And I think that most of you have been in those conversations with us. It's those tickets that require more than one touch, 2, 3 touches, sometimes even more, that eventually become JIRA tickets and lead to either a site improvement or a form improvement. Those are the ones that are the most time consuming. Um, and we love actually doing those because that's how we improve the system. And if a form is malfunctioning, the malfunction could be impacting a lot of people that are not contacting us. So we we do have the resources to do that type of service for you. If we look at the next slide, a lot of those time intensive figuring out what the person is reporting to us, if we have enough information, lead to site modifications. And one of our main goals or strategies is to use the Zendesk, which Van staffs primarily with backup from me, is to use that to improve the system in a way that every year we decline the number of tickets that we get. And we've been doing this successfully since 2018. um, we used to have over 6,000 tickets a year. Every year, the number of tickets continues to go down. And here we're just showing you a little chart for 2021 and 2022, with the dark one, the dark blue being 2022, showing that we're slightly below, um, you know, and 2022, you can see that February kind of the site was not active, so of course it dropped to super low. um, and then it increased once we came back, and then it kind of stabilized below the gray line. So we always want to be minimizing the number of times people have to request support, technical assistance. And so it's good to know that we're doing that, because discount February, because that was an anomaly, but after February to see the line kind of level out. And hopefully 2023 will be the same. In terms of desktop, you know that we staff it generally from 9 a.m. Eastern to 6 p.m. Pacific. And Mondays is always the busiest day. If we go to the next slide, generally after a weekend, because we come and find all the weekend tickets, and people are using LHI 24/7. So Monday and Tuesday are the highest days. And I don't remember if I gave you, yeah. And the next slide we show the hours. You can see the pattern of hours. It is busy in terms of people reporting the 13 tickets on average at high peak times. People are reporting pretty probably until 6 p.m., 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, and then it drops off. But there's people that are on LHI reporting tickets all the way through midnight. And so those we pick up in the morning. In terms of end user feedback, let me go through this. We're at 11:40, really super quick. Mobile use continues to grow. And one of the things that was really impressive this year is that of all of the sessions, like if we have 100 sessions, 98% of those sessions actually generated documents, which is the higher that it has ever been. Some forms are doing 25%, other forms are doing 50%, but the average has really pulled up, which is really testament to improve instructions and better error messages and all of that, but also to your instructions and setting expectations of what people need to do before they sit down to complete the form. Plain language and all of that impacts that metric. Our end users are diverse. There tend to be 35 to 54. I love to keep an eye on older Americans. We're at 10%. As with poverty statistics, as with LSC case statistics, most of our users are female. Women tend to be more in poverty. 55% of our users are white. 27% are Black. 14% reporting being Latinx. 3% Asian. And then we also asked, about gender identities. I didn't put that here, but that was about 1 to 3% reporting, having diverse gender identities. So we are serving a very diverse community, and a lot of this is congruent with the target audience, right? Which is low income people that don't have access to attorneys to create forms. If we look at the next slide, it has the information on income. Again, I'm very proud to know that LHI is serving people that are extremely low income, and that we are not charging these folks to create complete legal documents. I'm very thankful for your partnership with us in that, because you can see, and we get this in feedback too all the time. Thanks for not taking money, because this month was really scarce for my family, or we didn't have money. We don't have a car. We don't have, people are really deprived financially, as it is the case when you're in poverty. So our income groups tend to be under 40,000 a year. Remember that we may have had staff in the end user survey. It doesn't necessarily mean that we didn't have staff or people working with nonprofits. But since we know that 83% of them were the people that were in need of the form, it's pretty safe to assume that these income distributions are for whoever is finding the LHI forms through your outreach and your Facebook and your statewide form pages. So really good to know we are helping this fragment of the population. However, we are not mean testing, so we do have some less than 10% of people who are reporting between $60,000 to $70,000 a year income, which in some urban areas is poverty wages too, or living paycheck to paycheck. And then we do have another less than 10% making 80,000 or more. So, you know, we are also a solution together for the middle class that's not part of a market. And, you know, the one thing also is that we work with a lot of partners across the United States. So if we go down, you know, our users continue to increase in rural. If we slide to the next slide, 41% of our users reported living in rural areas, up from 30% in 20, I'm sorry, I should say in 2021. The slide is wrong. So in 2021, we had 30%, which was still above the national average in the United States, which I think covers around 23%. It increased in 2022. So I think that it's really good to know that we are also a solution and a lifeline in what we call rural deserts, and which are areas where there are very few attorneys and particularly very few free or nonprofit attorneys. I am going to skip through the other ones because in the interest of time, um, you know, we had other metrics, but we will switch it over to Mark. And if we have time, we can come back, or we can look at the chat and see if folks have asked any questions or want to know something more about.
Sounds good. This is Mark. Could one of you guys make me an organizer so I can put a link in the chat and become a presenter? And Connie, that was great. I mean, I think that's a great overview of diversity and variety and scope of when you put it all together like that. I'm gonna
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say there's so many. So we had so many other questions I'm not sharing. Like there was an increase in the number of people that had broadband this year, which made me really happy because remember there was a huge investment in broadband in 2021 in the United States, right at the federal level. So it reflected in our data that more people had access to broadband that in 2021. So there's a treasure trove, and I'll be happy to connect with anyone who wants to look in more detail to some of this data, because I'm not sharing it all. There's a lot more.
Okay, I'm just gonna make myself presenter. I think I can do that. Yep. Show my screen, and I'm gonna reprise a talk Bart and I gave back at this call 2 years ago. So, and I'll go fast also. Let me just go to slide share here, and this will be a speed walk through a bunch of, I think, evergreen issues for people who are involved in LHI. And I put a link to the original call, which has, I think, a copy of these slides and maybe even a video of the session. So you're not going to miss much. The basic idea is, obviously, things don't always go well on LHI, and sometimes it's due to bugs or problems in the content that people post. And so it's important to have a kind of a mental framework to think about what can go wrong and how. And then there's generally two sides of what can go wrong. One is obviously the interview, and it could be that questions that should be asked are not asked, or the questions that need not be asked are asked, you know, wasting someone's time to answer things that have no significance for a document. Or maybe the same question is asked twice, which seems like a no-no, because the whole point of document automation and expert systems and online interviews is you should only have to answer things once, if at all. And sometimes the content just could be wrong or maybe not suited for the audience. So that's the interview side, lots of other possibilities. Then the document side, the generated documents we produce, obviously it could be outdated, could be poorly formatted, might just be wrong, might be the wrong form. That's kind of scary. And there can be some minor problems or major problems. And if the user has left certain questions not answered, the way in which they appear in the document may not be as you desire. So lots of things to think about. So things can go wrong in lots of different places. Obviously, the template, which will produce the document, the logic of the interview, Perhaps as somebody who's uploading content may run into troubles in the uploading process, not an end user. It could be due to the particular device that the user is using or the browser they're on or their local network. So lots of different places and ways in which things can go amiss. And of course, we have humans throughout the process, and humans are notoriously error prone. We have two kinds of content in LHI, A to J stuff, which you publish from the a2jauthor.org website, and the Hot Docs content, which you publish from the Hot Docs developer desktop authoring environment. And again, I'm just going to spin through this, but it's important to remember that sometimes errors may be just, little inconveniences, or they could be catastrophic. Somebody is in a serious problem, and if we can't help them produce their form in time, they may miss a deadline, or they may lack access to an important relief for domestic abuse or other kinds of issues. Sometimes errors are not obvious. They just happen behind the scenes and no one reports them until somebody finally notices. Again, we being the people that are uploading content and running LHI, we don't control the user's desktop. So users can be very creative in terms of what software they have, how they're running it, what browser, what operating system, what kind of device, and they can do the darndest things. And if you're a content developer, your control is somewhat limited. You don't control the underlying code of the LawHelp Interactive server itself. But what do you do? I think these are our mantras usually: test, test, test. You can both in Hot Docs and A2J, you can test things by the unit. There are lots of tools built into our authoring environments to allow you to test things before you even get to the point of uploading it to LHI. If you do run into a problem, again, it's kind of common sense, but what exactly happened? Under what circumstances did it happen? And if you can replicate it, and ideally save and share the answers associated with the problem, that can allow the rest of us to really debug it. So I'm going to actually just rapidly just show these slides, because I think you can watch them at your leisure, and we're almost out of time. But questions asked, thinking about this: what went wrong? Where was it? When did it happen? Was it always happening, or just start happening? Does it only happen under certain scenarios? Hot Docs has got a couple notorious errors we've seen that can be caused by negligent developers or innocent developers who just stumble into problems. For instance, you can script a Hot Docs interview to assemble documents, but if you arrange your interview such that it only assembles documents under certain circumstances, and in a particular case it doesn't assemble anything, that's going to cause an error. So there are ways to avoid that. The famous divide by zero error, where you've got some logic in your interview or your document that needs to do a mathematical calculation, and you've got a variable in the denominator of your calculation that somehow ends up being zero. And that's a no-no mathematically, and in terms of Hot Docs, that kind of thing may or may not be caught locally. So it's something you want to be sure to watch out for. And you can have repetitions that are just unbounded. So something is going through a number of iterations. If you're not careful, it may keep doing that until it reaches an upper limit, and then Hot Docs and LHI will complain. So there are real-time error checking tools built in, and Bart and I have covered those on other calls, and happy to help people deal with it. Hot Docs has got lots of built-in tools. These are some of them. I won't review them all here. A common problem, this often most associated with A2J, and it's getting better, but once in a while, A2J interviews will emit an answer set that is invalid, either because it's got a date, a non-date in a date field, or a non-number in a number field, which LHI will freak out about, or it'll have a variable with a value but no name for the variable. And this is what an answer file looks like, by the way, for those that haven't actually had the pleasure of downloading these, which you can do now as a developer on LHI. But every little item of data that has been entered, either in an A2J or a Hot Docs interview, gets saved in this text file, and with associated syntax that tells the server what kind of data it is. And if you've got a date value a date variable with a non-date value, that's going to throw an error. Or if you have, which is in red here, you've got a variable in your A to J interview that for some reason doesn't have a name, you'll see this kind of a problem, and that'll throw an error. I'm not going to demo. Just a few other closing points, which is, you can have a perfectly well-behaving interview and document, but it can just be wrong. And that's probably the scariest scenario. It may be right at the time you originally posted it, but the world has changed, the laws have changed, and nobody has bothered to go back and update it. So that's a critical problem we need to be on the lookout for. Usually, if you can actually diagnose it and explain the problem, someone can help you solve it. So it may not be your fault. You may want to call a friend, let somebody else look at it. Very often other people can see things that those of us that develop this content are too close to. And I'm going to stop there. This is one last thing to mention. There's a cool little interview on LHI, the link to which is here. It's interview 5566 if you want to go that way. But it's a problem profiler. And this is a couple years old, but I think it's a good way systematically to define a problem you're running into for yourself or others to advance your thinking and the ultimate solution. So I will stop. And like I say, I refer you to the original presentation if that's of use to you. Back to you, Claudia or Sanam.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, thank you. So for the next community call in August, I have it in the slides, the date. We're gonna do more in-depth, kind of going back to QA, quality assurance, and we're gonna do a joint, a quick training on, because we have new developers or some of you who are coming to refresh skills and stuff like that. So our plan is to do a quick demo on how you do complete like testing from A to C. So like testing on your desktop, testing on the server, testing, checking that the variables are matching and all of that. And we're very thankful to our partners at Cali because Jessica is gonna participate in that with us. And so it will be kind of like, QA of a form before it goes live 101. And then we'll also show you like the tools that we're giving you, like your own elmah log reports, how to find them. And there's more reports than the logs are very, very generous. So also kind of commenting, okay, these are things that you should be looking at in your logs when you have a new form. And then we'll bring it you back to desktop support of when the user contacts us, how we're gonna go through. And then if we think that it's an issue that it's not on LHI, and that the user cannot resolve themselves, then how we will bring you back into the conversation to see if together we can jointly resolve it. So that's the plan for August, and we haven't done one of that in a little while, so we thought that doing it and being very hands-on and kind of doing the full loop would be really helpful to everyone. And particularly since I do want everybody to continue doing creative interview work, and thinking about how we accommodate end users from the first pleading set all the way to where they get their order, and they hopefully get the order that they needed to be safe and to get the rights that they have under law. So that's kind of the plan for August. And like I said, in December, we will go back and look at some of the suggestions in terms of how do we train end users that are using your forms, and maybe have a conversation about that and get some more feedback from you on all of that, because there's a robust nonprofit sector using forms powered through LHI. And so how do we best support them? Because they are part of the solution, right? The solution is not just lawyers. It's not just technologists. The solution is people who have the skills to support somebody that's distressed or in need of a legal document that's complete, professional, etc. So that's going to be the December call. But we welcome any other suggestions. And I really apologize for being so late. I had a problem in my laptop with the GoToWebinar. So apologies and thank you all for sticking around. I don't know if we have any questions or comments. Did we see anything on the chat?
But no, we did not. We
Okay.
do not have.
Okay, well then that's it. We get to finish at the hour. But if anybody wants you know to talk about the evaluation, to see, what else, like, what type, we have so much information. Happy to hear and also get suggestions on how to present this, because it's a treasure trove of data and with a pretty good robust sample. So data, we love data. So thank you all. Thank you, Mark. Thank you,
Thanks,
Bart.
guys. You're
Bye.
welcome. Bye.